No one wants to get hit by a car, of course, and none of us even want to think about that, but sometimes it can happen. So on this video, we're going to talk about a couple things. One, how to avoid such a situation, and two, if you do find yourself in the unfortunate situation of being hit by a car, what you should know and what you should do. Today, I'm happy to be joined by Andrew Phillips, aka the Cyclist Lawyer, who knows far more than I do about this. So Andrew, thanks for coming in, and how are you?
I'm great. Thanks a ton for having me here today. I'm stoked to talk with you today, honestly.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here. And we won't make this all doom and gloom. There's certainly some bright spots here. So we want to talk about how we can prevent being hit. Maybe some common situations you can walk us through.
Yeah, a couple different ideas.
I want to talk about some gear that you recommend that you use yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Before we get in that, maybe you could explain to the folks who is the Cyclist Lawyer. I've been seeing the Cyclist Lawyer logo as a bike rider in Colorado for 20 plus years. For a long time, I knew the Cyclist Lawyer as Megan Hotman. So it's a similar thing. So what is your background? I see you on Strava riding quite a bit.
Ride a little bit, a little bit. I went to school just a couple blocks from here over at CU and started in the world of personal injury law and really got into riding over the last 15 years. Megan, my old partner, she said, Andrew, you need to take over the Cyclist Lawyer. You're a cyclist. Quit that big old billboard law firm, right? And come ride over here and just focus on cycling cases. And so eventually got talked into it and took over the firm, and it's all I do now, just represent cyclists that are injured, through the negligence or carelessness of drivers, trying to help them, navigate that path to recovery. And, I feel like having a cyclist attorney who's able to understand just, the lingo, the culture, what we do as cyclists, what it means to us, and helping them use that to their path of recovery is super important. So that's what I focus on.
Sure, and what it feels like to be a cyclist on the road, and you're involved in cycling safety in a lot of ways. We'll get into that too.
Yeah.
And also like how much these bikes cost.
Oh my gosh, yeah, more than my first car.
that is part of it. So if you would walk us through some common bike versus car accident situations.
Yeah, I see a lot of repeat things. So one very common one is if a cyclist is going through an intersection and an oncoming vehicle is wanting to make a left-hand turn, oftentimes we'll think that the vehicle sees us, there's other traffic, and they'll just whip right into us. And we often hear from those drivers, I just didn't see you. So as cyclists, it's super important that if we can, we're making eye contact with that driver in all sorts of different scenarios. If you got eye contact, it's much safer typically, but also just kind of expect that they're gonna turn into you. So while you might have some speed going through that intersection, it might be a good idea to be ready, on the hoods, ready to brake, and just be ready for that if they do, and making sure you're aware of your surroundings. Where's your exit path if you need it, so you can get out of that situation safely.
Some dad knowledge I've been drilling into my kids that they like to spit back at me when I'm being hypocritical is one, like assume that drivers are trying to hit you. Not that they are, but if you have that mentality of they talk in driving school of defensive driving, but defensive riding, assume that person is a moron. Yeah.
If you assume that all the time, right, you just know that they're not paying full attention. 75% of drivers are on their phones. Unfortunately, that's what we've found out, that they're going to be on their phones at some point during that drive.
75% of drivers, just across the board, not drivers who are involved in bike car
No,
accidents,
across the board. CDOT just released Colorado Department of Transportation released a study about a year ago saying that 75% of drivers are typically on their phone at some point during their drive. Super scary, right?
Yes.
So assume that everybody's on their phone, that they don't see you. And then just ride as defensively as possible. That's what you got to do.
My other dad thing is pay attention to the world around you. Again, something that my kids love spitting back to me when I'm being oblivious.
Right. But
so awareness and assuming that drivers don't see you is a common thing.
Yeah.
When there's oncoming traffic turning left.
That's one of the scariest things that we see, that oncoming traffic turning left. Another one that we see a lot of is in Colorado and a lot of states, there are bike lanes that are available for us so that we can pass traffic that might be, lined up and get closer to an intersection, which is perfectly legal. If there's a designated bike lane, you're allowed to pass traffic that's stopped at a light and go up to the front. It's actually a lot safer. You want to get to the front of that pack. But just be aware that if you're approaching that traffic light and the traffic on the left of you starts to move, there's almost always somebody's going to want to make a right-hand turn that doesn't have a blinker on. So again, just super aware that drivers are wild and unpredictable. So watching for that.
Yes, and the larger the vehicle, the greater the likelihood that they can't see you. Some large trucks, will have a little graphic on the back. Like,
Yeah.
if you're here, I can't see you, but
So, paying attention to what is the light sequence doing? Is it changing right now? And can I get in a spot where I'm safe to be, in between cars and watching that one that's right in front of me in case they do turn right? And if you've got speed coming up to the intersection, it can be tempting to just roll through at that speed, but
Yes.
really maybe back off some of the speed and, get a little workout, get back up to speed after that.
yeah. And most people, we'd like to think, use their turn signals, but not everyone. So
Yeah.
just, glancing down just because a vehicle doesn't have their
Yeah,
turn signal on
that's
doesn't
no
mean that
guarantee.
they're going to turn into. So how do you recommend positioning yourself vis-a-vis the cars? So you don't want to be inside the car as they're
Right.
turning, but do you suggest like pulling out in front of
If the
vehicle?
traffic starts moving and there's a gap there, I do. I'll
Yes.
move into the lane because the car behind me is not going to be going super fast yet. They're getting up to speed, and I've got a little bit of speed. I can get into traffic, and as we get through that intersection safely, then I can move back over into my bike lane. You are perfectly legal to take the lane when necessary. Lots of different reasons to do that, to go with the flow of traffic, to avoid obstacles, to avoid danger on the road. If there's debris, whatever it is, potholes, you can take the lane.
I try to be aggressively friendly sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
Thanks.
Hi, I'm here. I'm here.
Good
Although
point.
sometimes I'm concerned that my hand signals might be construed as like I'm turning right or something. But
Yeah,
I figure
yeah.
it's better to.
I think the more that you can communicate with
aggressively-
drivers, either with your eyes or
Yeah.
with your hands, something to let them know that, hey, I see you, you see me, we're in this together. Let's get through this little, we're close together for a moment, but you're going to be gone in 2 seconds. Let's just get through this. Hi, okay, all right, see you later.
So those are two common scenarios of intersections. When it's oncoming traffic turning left in front of you, or traffic you're going the same direction with turning right
Yeah,
into you.
yeah.
Are there other common scenarios you've seen?
I think that as a cyclist, that we oftentimes, when we're descending on a hill, we're always concerned about traffic behind us. It gets louder, the wind's louder, right? And so this kind of goes into like some of the tech that I like to use. I really enjoy having a radar detector that just lets me know if there's any traffic behind me. And if there's not, I can take the lane and descend safely down a mountain. I think that's a really good thing to do.
Are there other scenarios we should discuss before we talk about what to do, what to know if you do have the unfortunate situation of being hit?
You see it all, right? The fact is, though, that they're just not going to see you. You've got to see them. One thing that you can do as a cyclist to increase your safety is just planning. Planning your route. There's so many good options online, like Strava heat maps. You can see where other cyclists are riding. You're like, okay, that's a good road. And sometimes you can't avoid high traffic areas, but if you can, time of day, the route, those are some things that a little bit of planning will help keep you in your interactions with motor vehicles to a minimum.
How about riding on the sidewalk? Is that something
You're
recommend?
technically not supposed to ride on most sidewalks in most municipalities. You are
Okay.
traffic. You're supposed to act like traffic, which means that all the traffic laws apply to you just like it does for a vehicle, with very little exceptions. So you wouldn't see a car on a sidewalk typically. You shouldn't be on a sidewalk either, right? But there are some scenarios where there are designated pathways that are sidewalks. I think about like the Cherry Creek Trail in downtown Denver. It actually ends up being a sidewalk for a while, but it's a designated trail. So there are times where it's okay, but for the most part, you should be in traffic, acting like traffic.
I will occasionally get up on sidewalks when I'm in places I'm not too familiar with.
Sure.
I use Strava and the route builder. The majority of the time is fantastic.
Yeah, just remember that if you get on the sidewalk, you're now a pedestrian.
Yes.
Which means that when you come to an intersection, you can't just roll off the curb at 20 miles an hour.
Yes.
You have to slow down to the speed of a pedestrian when you're crossing that intersection.
And here in Boulder, Colorado, I see signs of speed limit signs for the crosswalks,
Yeah.
like 8 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I'll have to say sometimes I'm guilty of taking it a little bit faster through there. But at 8 miles an hour, like you're supposed to be going very slowly if you're in a crosswalk.
Because
it's
the danger, again,
it's a pedestrian thing. Not
all those cars are interacting with that intersection, and they're not expecting a cyclist maybe to come off the sidewalk at 20 miles an hour.
Yes.
But maybe they'll be looking for a jogger or somebody and expect, well, I've got a little bit of time. And they glance and they don't see anybody, and then you're coming at 20 miles an hour, something bad's going to happen.
And if you're going 8 miles an hour, if they don't stop, you can stop yourself a lot
Exactly.
better.
Yeah, a lot faster.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. If you are hit,
Please don't get hit.
please,
Don't get hit.
what should you do, and what do you need to know? And I realize a lot of that hinges on how bad the
how
accident
severe it is, right?
Sure.
Hopefully you never get hit, but if you do, If it's not so severe that you're able to start documenting things, you should document some stuff. You know, most of us have our phones, pull it out, take pictures, try to record if you can. If you have an interaction with the driver where you're talking to them, try to record that. You're allowed to do that, and it's a good idea because you know, some things can get forgotten. Bikes can get moved, vehicles can get moved by the time that maybe the police show up there. Different stories are coming out, and you just want to make sure that you can document it if you can. If you're unable to, and somebody's with you, like if you have a buddy who's riding with you, they should be ready to document for you. And so be aware of that. Like, it's your job to just start gathering some information that's there, because it's going to be transient. You're going to lose that information very quickly.
And that doesn't have to be a confrontational thing of like putting the camera in the face, but to tell the person, I just want to make sure I get all this information down and record it. Yeah,
get information, right? You know, their name, their information, their insurance information, all that kind of stuff. And if it's bad enough where you're bleeding or you're hurt or you're in pain, you lost your breath, whatever it is, you blacked out, you really should be calling the authorities. Get some response there. Have them check you up. Yeah.
So should you, like in a vehicle situation, should you not leave the scenario until some authorities have shown up, or is that based on how bad the situation is?
Well, it would be my preference that everybody has the authorities come to document it because it's independent. But there are situations where it's super minor, like, hey, it's just a bump, I didn't fall down, I'm okay. Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and, you know, exchange some information, and probably you're fine. But anything much more severe, if you got knocked down, you hit the ground, you hit your head, the bike's crumpled, you need to get authorities there.
Have you ever been hit by a car?
I've had super close calls, but, you know, yeah.
Good.
Good. Thankfully not. I've gone down on my own. Nothing that I can blame anybody else for.
Sure.
Just my own stupidity.
I've been there myself more times than it.
But what about you?
Two, both thankfully relatively minor.
Good.
One by an old gentleman in Santa Fe who was driving an enormous boat of a car, and you know, we were both leaving the stoplight, and he was going maybe 6 miles an hour and hit me with his rearview mirror, which got the adrenaline going, and I sprinted up next to him and was yelling through his window. I was like, young man, what's going on? Like, you hit me with your car. Like, what are you talking about? Somebody needs to take this guy's license. So that was relatively harmless. Another incident on Bike to Work Day
of course,
days in California. I was going straight in a bike lane on a main road, you know, SoCal roads, enormous roads, going through an intersection where the side road had a stop sign. So a car came up, stopped, and looked, I thought, right at me.
Yeah, you thought you had that.
I did this, and like just as I'm about to go through, when I have no stoplight, no stop sign, the car accelerates and hit the hood, you know, hit the side of the car and slid over the hood, and
man,
like laying there on the ground.
Those are some scary situations. You know, what you said reminded me of something though, like that adrenaline rush that you're gonna have from either a close call or a bump.
Yes.
Like, it's gonna make you want to interact with that driver in a way that maybe you wouldn't normally interact.
Yes.
And my advice is don't.
Yes.
You know, as much as you can, take the breath, because that confrontation, F you, whatever, you know, it's not good for anybody. It doesn't change anybody's actions, and it just really elevates it to a way that, unfortunately, the tension between drivers and cyclists is bad enough. And if we can do anything to avoid increasing that, let's do it. Let's be great ambassadors for the sport.
Speaking of,
not that everybody's perfect. We're not going to do that.
I think the people, the driver and the passenger who I had that interaction with in California were expecting that type of thing, because I was laying there on the ground.
Sure.
The windows were up. In the car, windows up. And I was, I'm laying on the ground, exchanging some choice words, and it took them a while to roll the windows down. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to try to fight you, but we do need to have an exchange here. I did not call the cops. I suggested, hey, you need to make this right.
Yeah.
You could either go through insurance, or you can just pay for my now busted wheels.
Right.
In retrospect, I probably should have documented that and called the cops instead of just trying
I think in that situation, you ended up on the ground and the bike was busted up. Like, I think that's probably a good example of when you should call the police. Maybe the other one where you got bumped a little bit, and thankfully.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's that line. And if you think about it before it ever happens, like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, if you think about it before it ever happens, hopefully it never does, you're prepared for it. And you've already made those decisions, like, okay, this is when I'm going to do this.
As many of us who've been riding for many years know, there can be some worst case scenarios. Like some of my riding racing partners have been killed on the bike here in Colorado and in New Mexico. I was just spent last week rooming with my friend Andrew Bernstein, who got hit with a hit and run, and he was in a bad way for months. Things can go horribly wrong. Tell us about some like relative best case scenarios you've seen when there's an accident and things are handled in a way that, considering the circumstances, come out well.
So first of all, I want to just correct you a little bit. The word accident, we try not to use that word because it's not an accident to make a decision to be on your phone. It's not an accident to be driving distracted. Those aren't accidents. Those are conscious decisions. And so it's something that I struggle with. Sometimes I call things accidents and it's not. It's a crash. It's a collision. It's a conscious decision. But some of the worst case scenarios I've seen that actually turned out pretty good is when the cyclists had made prior decisions about how they're going to protect themselves if the worst case scenario happened. So for instance, I have, in 9 out of 10 collisions where there's a hit and run, the driver's never found 9 out of 10 times. And so what do you do in that situation? You got hit by a car, the driver flees and you never find them. Well, what's the best case scenario in that situation? It's something called underinsured motorist coverage. It's a coverage that you carry on your own auto policy that actually follows you on your bike. And so I'm thinking about a case just a couple of months ago where I had this client who got sideswiped by a car, ended up breaking his ankle, surgery, pretty awful, took him out of racing season for a long time. Car took off, never found him. But he had underinsured motorist coverage, and so we were able to cover all his medical bills and his lost wages and take care of him that way. So UIM coverage, or uninsured motorist coverage, it's something that you can add on to your policy. And I tell folks the bare minimum is usually $250,000. That should cover most everything, and it goes up from there.
Okay, good to know. I've seen the Cyclist Lawyer logo around many places.
Yeah, I like to ride.
Often at events that you're supporting. What else? What are you doing to help support safety or encourage cycling safety in Colorado? Not that it's on you, but I know that you're active.
Where I can support, I try to, because I really believe that accountability equals responsibility, and responsibility will lead to cultural change. And that's what we really need. We need a cultural change to have drivers have a little bit more respect for cyclists, to understand that we're vulnerable out there and that we're somebody's dad or husband or brother or mother or sister. So they see us as real people, and just a couple of seconds of their day to get out, be safe around us will, possibly save a life. So how do we hold people accountable? There's the legal system. That's where I come in, right? And there's two different components to that. There's the civil side and the criminal side. My world is focused on the civil side. I'm trying to hold people financially responsible for their actions. But there's also this criminal side that I think is an important component. And so where I can, I try to lend some help or advocacy there. So yesterday, I got to spend the day down at our state capitol advocating for this new bill that's trying to get passed to hold drivers accountable when they carelessly kill somebody, that they should be charged with a felony rather than a misdemeanor, which is kind of wild when you think about it. In Colorado, if you kill somebody while you're texting and driving, that's a misdemeanor. It's a fine. It's the same thing as stealing a phone. It's like nothing. It's the same thing as writing a bad check. You killed somebody, you're texting and driving. How is that possibly the same? And so there's this new bill that we're working on, trying to get passed. And yesterday I got to testify to the Judiciary Committee, advocating for the support of that it should be a felony. You should face harsher penalties in that situation, because that's accountability. I think that if we do that, people will hopefully act more responsible, and we'll get that cultural change that we need.
What is the name of that bill?
It's the SB 281, so Senate Bill 281. Yeah.
Okay, for Colorado.
Yeah, if anybody wants to learn more about it, I highly recommend that they go to bicyclecolorado.com. Great advocacy program that's leading the charge on that. You can learn a lot about it there.
How does Colorado compare to other states in terms of both like cycling infrastructure and then the laws to protect cyclists?
Well, I'm happy to say that we're kind of leading the way in a lot of ways, right? We're definitely a cycling community. We're a outdoor community here. We like to hike, we run, we do all the things, right? That's what we encourage in Colorado and kind of the Mountain West. Even states like Idaho, where you wouldn't be as keen to maybe ride your bike on the road, they are trying to keep up with us, I think. But in general, I think Colorado is a great place to ride a bike. It's just, it's the best. So I think that we do a really good job with our infrastructure and our legislation. There's always work to be done, but we're trying, and we got a lot of great advocates out there.
this is a bike gear channel. Let's talk about bike gear.
Yeah,
What sort of stuff do you use when you're riding to keep yourself safe, to help yourself be seen?
Yeah, so one of the all-time favorites is the Garmin Varia with radar and camera. I love that machine. It records video of any close incidents or anything else. It can be set in a lot of different ways. I'm sure you've done all sorts of reviews on it, but I really like that. In fact, I hand those out at every event that I sponsor. I'm always giving away one of those.
Okay.
That's like my go-to giveaway prize. So Garmin Varia with the radar and the camera, I think is a great thing. Headlights, taillights, always important. I run them in the day, regardless. I like having a camera on the front of my bike too. And Garmin just came out with a new one, the View, but I've used a lot of different ones, the Cyclist, the GoPros. There's a lot of different ways to get some cameras on your bike. Yeah.
Battery life is getting a whole lot better. That's one nice
man.
thing about, bike prices keep going up and up. The tech on, as far as electronics, is getting better and not necessarily more expensive.
Which just means that I forget to charge it later. So then I end up with a one buy.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, it's been great.
Important information. And viewers, I'm happy to announce that the Cyclist Lawyer is now supporting the ride. So you'll be getting tips from Andrew throughout the year on other topics of relating to cycling safety in Colorado in specific, but about in the United States in general.
Yeah, just stay safe out there is the goal here for everybody.
Absolutely. Because staying safe on the bike definitely helps you to enjoy the ride.